Hey, tonight we explore the forgotten pathways of medieval history, where women carved spaces of autonomy through property ownership, long before modern notions of equality emerged. The quiet rustle of ancient parchment deeds and wax seals await your discovery as we journey through misty morning fields and stone-walled manors. Feel yourself drifting backward through time's gentle current, where the whispered stories of widows, merchants' daughters, and noble ladies reveal how property became their silent power in a world that often sought to diminish their voices. Their legacy flows through centuries, like a hidden river, nourishing freedoms we now take for granted. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What distant memories have you carried with you tonight as you prepare to drift into these historical dreams? Dim your lights now, and perhaps light a single candle whose flame dances shadows across your walls. Listen to the gentle rhythm of your own breathing as it merges with the soft background hum of your room. Let your thoughts release their hold on today's concerns and wander gently into the past, where women's stories await your discovery. You awaken to the gentle patter of rain against wooden shutters, the scent of damp earth rising through the rushes covering the packed dirt floor. Your chamber is shadowed, but for the gentle glow of dying embers in the central hearth. The year is 978, and you are Elfgifu, recently widowed at 20 summers in the Anglo-Saxon settlement of Wiltonshire. The weight of grief still presses upon your chest like a stone, but beneath it lies something else, a realization slowly taking form. The woolen blanket feels rough against your skin as you pull it closer, fighting the autumn chill that seeps through the wattle and daub walls of your home. Your husband Edric, a respected Then who served the local ealdorman, has been gone 3 weeks now, carried away by a fever that came swift as a summer storm and departed, leaving only silence. Your fingers absent-mindedly trace the outline of the silver brooch he gifted you on your wedding morning, your Morgan Gifu, your morning gift. Beyond the brooch, Edric bestowed upon you something far more valuable that morning after your wedding feast. Standing before witnesses, he had placed in your hands the deed to 3 hides of fertile land, a small apple orchard, and a mill beside the rushing brook. "These are yours alone," he had said, his voice clear in the morning mist, "to hold and to keep, regardless of what may come." At the time, the words seemed merely part of the ceremony, beautiful but distant as stars. Now, as you rise from your bed and move to stoke the fire, the meaning of those words has transformed. The floorboards creak beneath your bare feet, each step a reminder that this house, this land, belongs to you alone, not to your father, nor to Edric's brothers, who cast increasingly long glances at the property when they bring offerings of food and thinly veiled suggestions about your future. You kneel beside the hearth, adding small sticks to the embers, watching as tiny flames begin to dance. The heat warms your face as memories surface. Your mother had also been widowed young, but without a Morgangifu. Forced to return to her father's household, her identity dissolved back into daughter, rather than remaining the mistress of her own home. She had whispered to you before your wedding, "Pray he is generous with the morning gift. It may be your shield one day." Light gradually fills the single-room dwelling as dawn breaks. You move to the small wooden chest near your bed, lift its heavy lid, and remove a folded parchment, the proof of Edric's gift, witnessed by the priest and sealed by the reeve. Your fingers trace the Latin words you cannot read, but whose meaning you understand completely. In these cryptic markings lies your independence. Outside, the settlement is coming to life. You hear the distant lowing of cattle, the call of the swineherd gathering pigs for their daily forage in the woodland. The smell of wood smoke hangs in the damp air as you push open the door and step onto the muddy path. Women nod respectfully as they pass, carrying water from the well or heading toward the communal baking ovens with dough prepared from the night before. Their eyes hold a mixture of pity and something else, curiosity, perhaps even envy. A woman, alone yet not destitute, not dependent, not forced to remarry immediately for protection or sustenance. At the edge of the village stands the small wooden church, its bell calling the faithful to morning prayers. You pull your woolen cloak tighter and make your way there, the hem of your linen dress darkening with mud. Inside, the air is heavy with incense. Candles cast wavering light on painted walls depicting saints and biblical scenes. Father Ethelwold nods solemnly as you enter, his eyes lingering briefly on your solitary figure before returning to his preparations. You take your place among the villagers, feeling their glances. The whispers have not stopped since Edric's passing. She'll remarry before winter, some say. The ealdorman's younger son has already expressed interest, others murmur. But they do not know what courses through your veins now. A quiet determination, born of security. The morning gift has granted you something rare. Time to choose, space to breathe, power to decide. After prayers, Father Ethelwold beckons you to remain. His bony fingers retrieve a small scroll from within his robes. Your husband was a prudent man, he says softly. He asked me to keep this copy of your Morgangifu deed in the church records. He feared his brothers might. The priest's voice trails off, but his meaning is clear. Even Edric had anticipated the covetousness of his kin. You accept the scroll, with trembling hands. Can you read it to me? You ask, your voice barely above a whisper. The priest nods, unrolling the parchment carefully, as he translates the formal Latin into your native tongue. You close your eyes, letting the words wash over you like a blessing. 3 hides of land, enough to feed a family for a year and more. The mill with its steady income from grinding the village grain. The orchard whose sweet fruit could be sold at market or pressed into cider. All yours, protected by law and custom. The day unfolds around you as you walk the boundaries of your property. The earth feels different beneath your feet now. Not just soil, but sovereignty. The apple trees stand in neat rows, their branches heavy with late fruit. You reach up and pluck one, its skin cool and smooth against your palm. The tart sweetness fills your mouth as you bite into it, juice dribbling down your chin. A simple pleasure, made profound by ownership. At the mill, the great wheel turns steadily, with the brook's flow. The miller, Leofric, bows slightly as you approach. Mistress, he says, the title acknowledging your position. The grinding goes well today. 5 families have brought their grain. He hesitates, fingers working at the edge of his cap. Some were asking if you would continue to operate the mill, or if your husband's brothers would take it over. You feel a surge of something unfamiliar, pride mingled with defiance. The mill remains mine, Leofric, as does your position, if you wish to keep it. The relief on his weathered face is immediate. His family has worked this mill for 3 generations. Edric's brothers would likely have installed their own man. The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds as you make your way to the fields. 3 hides, roughly 360 acres, stretch before you in a patchwork of browns and greens. Some plots lie fallow, others show the stubble of recent harvest, and the remainder hold winter crops newly sprouted. Men and women work the land, cutting turnips or guiding oxen pulling heavy ploughs. They straighten as you pass, offering respectful nods. These are your tenants now, their livelihoods intertwined with your land. Among them is Wulfric, the oldest, freeman in the village, and one of Edric's most trusted workers. He approaches, wiping soil from his calloused hands. The northern field yielded well this year, he reports, his voice gravelly with age. We've stored the grain as the master instructed. He pauses, studying your face. As you would instruct. Now, I suppose, you feel a moment of uncertainty flutter in your chest. You know the rhythms of a household, the management of stores and servants, but the broader decisions of agriculture have always been Edric's domain. Yet you've watched and listened over the years, absorbed more than perhaps even you realized. The northern field should be planted with barley come spring, you say, remembering Edric's rotation plans. And the western strip left fallow. Wulfric nods approvingly. Just as I would have suggested, mistress. His weathered face creases into a smile. You'll do well enough, I think. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the land, you find yourself drawn to the small knoll where Edric is buried. The mound of earth is still fresh, marked by a wooden cross that will eventually be replaced with carved stone. You kneel beside it, feeling the cool grass beneath your skirts, and place a hand on the soil that now embraces him. Did you know? You whisper. Did you understand what freedom you were giving me with your morning gift? The breeze carries your words away, offering no answer but the rustle of leaves from a nearby oak. Perhaps he had known. Perhaps it was simply tradition, followed without deep contemplation of its meaning for women like you. Either way, the result is the same. A widow with means, with choices. Returning home as dusk settles, you find Edric's youngest brother waiting at your door. Beortric is barely older than you, his beard still thin on his cheeks. Unlike his elder brothers, there is no calculation in his eyes, only genuine concern. I brought you fresh bread and honey, he says, offering a cloth-wrapped bundle. Mother worried you might not be eating properly. The scent of the warm loaf makes your stomach remind you that you've eaten little today. Thank you, you reply, accepting the gift and gesturing for him to enter. Inside, you break the bread and offer him half, along with mead from a clay pitcher. His large hands cup the wooden drinking bowl awkwardly. My brothers are saying unpleasant things, he blurts, suddenly, about how it's not right for a woman, especially one so young, to hold such valuable property alone. They've been to speak with the ealdorman. He looks down, embarrassed. I thought you should know. The information doesn't surprise you, but the warning does. Why tell me this? You ask, studying his downcast face. Edric was kind to me, he says simply. And what my brothers plot isn't right. The morning gift is sacred. Every man knows this. That night, after Beortric leaves, you sit by the hearth in the quiet darkness, turning your silver brooch over in your hands. The flames cast dancing patterns across its surface, illuminating the intricate knotwork. Outside, an owl calls, a lone voice in the gathering night. You think of all the women before you who received morning gifts, a tradition stretching back beyond memory. Some gifts small, some substantial, but all representing the same truth, that even in a world where women were largely considered property themselves, there existed this one custom that acknowledged their right to own, to hold, to decide. Sleep comes fitfully, dreams mixing with plans. When morning breaks again, you dress with particular care, choosing your finest woolen gown and the embroidered headscarf that marks your status as a married, now widowed, woman. The silver brooch secures your cloak at the shoulder, With the deed safely tucked within the folds of your garment, you set out for the ealdorman's hall. The journey takes most of the morning, following muddy tracks through forest and field. The ealdorman's settlement is larger than your own, its wooden palisade visible from a distance. Guards at the gate eye you curiously but allow you to pass. A woman alone, yet clearly of some standing based on your dress and demeanor. The great hall rises at the center, smoke curling from its roof. Whole. Outside, men gather in small groups, discussing matters of importance or settling disputes before bringing them to the ealdorman's attention. Their conversations pause as you pass, eyes following your progress. Women are not unknown in these proceedings, but neither are they common. Inside, the hall is dim and smoky, the smell of roasted meat and damp dogs hanging in the air. Ealdorman Ethelmeyer sits upon a carved chair on a slightly raised platform, his grey beard nearly reaching his belt. He is in conversation with two men whose backs are to you, but you recognize the set of their shoulders. Edric's elder brothers, Wulfstan and Leofwine. You wait quietly, heart pounding beneath your ribs, until the ealdorman's gaze falls upon you. His bushy eyebrows rise slightly. "Ah, the widow of Edric approaches," he says, his voice carrying across the hall. The brothers turn, surprise and annoyance flashing across their features. "Come forward, daughter. What brings you from your home on such a day? The packed earth." Floor seems to stretch endlessly as you make your way forward. Every eye in the hall follows your progress. The weight of the deed against your chest gives you courage with each step. When you reach the appropriate distance, you bow your head. Respectfully, "Lord Ealdorman," you begin, your voice steadier than expected. "I come to affirm my claim to the lands and properties granted to me through Morgan-Gifu by my late husband Edric, then in your service." You withdraw the parchment and hold it forward. "I have brought the deed, witnessed and sealed according to custom." Wulfstan steps forward, his face flushed. "My lord, this is unnecessary. We were just discussing the proper management of my brother's lands. The woman cannot possibly—" The ealdorman raises a hand, silencing him. "The morning gift is sacred custom, Wulfstan, as well you know." He gestures for you to approach with the document. His fingers, thick but surprisingly gentle, take the parchment. Though he likely cannot read the Latin text, he examines the seals with care. "Father Ethelwald witnessed this?" he asks, recognizing one of the marks pressed into the wax. "Yes, lord, and the reeve as well." You feel Wulfstan and Leofwine exchanging glances beside you. The ealdorman hands the document back to you. "The morning gift has been a custom among our people since before we came to these shores," he says, his voice taking on the formal cadence used for pronouncements. "It is the husband's acknowledgement of the wife's honor in giving herself to him, and her compensation for the loss of maidenhood. Once given, it becomes the woman's sole property, to dispose of as she sees fit." He turns his gaze to the brothers. If Edric chose to be generous in his gift, that was his right. The land, the mill, and the orchard belong to his widow now, not to his bloodkin. A smile creases his weathered face, though I suspect some were hoping I might rule otherwise. Leofwine steps forward, attempting a different approach. "My lord, we worry only for her safety and the proper management of valuable assets. A young woman alone makes an easy target for those with ill intent. Perhaps if she were to remarry, perhaps she will, in time." The ealdorman interrupts. "That choice too is hers to make." His eyes, shrewd beneath heavy brows, study you, though I suspect she is made of sterner stuff than you credit. Relief floods through you, making your knees weak. You had not realized until this moment how afraid you had been. not of losing comfort or status, but of losing the unexpected autonomy that had come with Edric's death and gift. The knowledge that you need not surrender to another's authority unless you choose to do so. The journey home feels lighter somehow, despite the physical exertion. The autumn sun breaks through clouds intermittently, casting dappled shadows across the path. You gather chestnuts where they have fallen in the forest, filling a pouch at your belt with the smooth brown bounty. Tonight, you will roast them by the fire, a small celebration of your victory. Days pass into weeks, the rhythm of rural life continuing despite the changes in your personal circumstance. You learn to speak with authority to the field workers, to negotiate fair prices with merchants who come to buy your orchard's fruit, to ensure the mill operates efficiently. Mistakes are made. A barrel of apples spoils because you stored them improperly. You overpay for winter stores of salt. But these are lessons, not failures. The first heavy frost comes in early November, painting the world in crystalline white overnight. You wake to a transformed landscape, each blade of grass, each remaining, leaf outlined in delicate ice. The brook beside the mill flows more sluggishly, ice forming at its edges. Standing in your doorway, breath fogging in the cold air, you feel a surge of pride as you survey what is yours. Not just land and buildings, but something more precious, the freedom to determine your own fate. Suitors begin to call as winter deepens. The ealdorman's younger son, an ambitious young merchant from the nearby town, even a cousin of King Ethelred's thanes who happened to be passing through. Each brings gifts and carefully crafted compliments. Each speaks of protection and security. None mention that marriage would transfer your properties to their control. But this truth hangs unspoken in every conversation. On the eve of the winter solstice, the longest night of the year, you host a small feast. The one-room house is crowded with those who have become your allies. Wulfric and his wife, Leofric the miller and his family, Father Ethelwold, even young, Beortric, who has distanced himself from his brother's schemes. The fire burns bright, casting warm light over faces flushed with mead and good food. As the evening progresses, Father Ethelwold draws you aside. "You have done well," he says, quietly, "better than many expected. But winter is long, and spring brings choices. You think I should remarry," you state. Not a question, but a recognition of the practical reality most anticipate. The priest's eyes are kind in his ascetic face. "I think you should know that you have options beyond what most widows face." Glances around at your gathered guests. "You have created something here, not just maintained what Edric left, but built upon it. That is rare for anyone, man or woman." Later, as your guests depart into the cold night, stars brilliant in the black sky above, Wulfric's wife Sinuwise clasps your hands in her work-roughened ones. "My grandmother was like you," she says. "Widowed young with a good morning gift. She never remarried, though many thought her foolish. She died an old woman, respected and independent." The older woman searches your face. "It's not an easy path, but it exists because of customs older than any of us can remember." That night, alone in your bed, you think of all the women who came before you, women whose names might be forgotten, but whose lives created the customs that now shelter you. The Anglo-Saxon tradition of the morning gift, the Morgengifu, predates even the arrival of Christianity to these shores. Some scholars trace it back to ancient Germanic customs, brought across the sea when your ancestors arrived generations ago. Unlike other medieval societies where women's property rights would later become more restricted, this custom has endured. You wonder about its origins. Was it born from love? Husbands wanting to ensure their wives would not suffer if widowed? Was it pragmatic? A society recognizing that women left destitute become burdens? Or was it something deeper, an acknowledgement that women deserved some measure of security and autonomy in a world that often denied them both? Snow falls softly outside, blanketing the world in silence. Tomorrow there will be footprints breaking its perfect surface. Life continuing, decisions waiting. But tonight, wrapped in woolen blankets in a house that is yours alone, you understand something profound about freedom. It often comes in quiet ways, through customs and traditions whose significance is only fully revealed in moments of need. The morning gift has given you more than material security. It has revealed possibilities you never considered before. That widowhood need not mean dependency, that a woman might direct her own affairs, that property brings with it a kind of power previously unimagined, not power over others, but power over your own existence. Spring will indeed bring choices, as the priest suggested. Perhaps you will eventually remarry, joining your property with a husband who values your demonstrated capabilities. Perhaps you will remain independent, a rare but not unprecedented path. What matters is that the choice will be yours to make, a freedom granted by ancient custom and protected by contemporary law. As sleep draws near, you find yourself whispering a prayer of gratitude for Edric's generosity, for the Ealdorman's justice, but most of all, for the ancient tradition that recognized, however imperfectly, a woman's right to possess something of her own. The morning gift, a sliver of independence in a world that rarely offered such to women, has become your sanctuary, your foundation, your future. Centuries later, legal scholars would look back at customs like the Morgengifu as early precursors to more comprehensive property rights for women. But tonight, in your small Saxon home, such future developments are unimaginable. What matters is the immediate reality, that the land beneath the snow outside is yours, the roof above your head is yours, and the decisions about tomorrow are yours to make. In your dreams that night, you walk the boundaries of your land, not as it is now, buried under winter snow, but as it will be in spring. Green shoots pushing through rich soil, apple trees heavy with blossoms, the mill wheel turning steadily with the meltwater's flow. And in this dream, you are not alone. Other women walk with you, some in garments ancient even to your eyes, others in dress you cannot comprehend. Their faces are both strange and familiar, connected to you through the slender thread of shared experience across time. Women who owned, who decided, who lived on their own terms, however limited those might seem from a distant future perspective. You awaken with first light, the dream's images fading but its essence remaining. Outside, the new day breaks clear and cold over a white landscape. You rise, stoke the fire, and begin your morning tasks. There is bread to bake, animals to tend, accounts to settle with the miller. Ordinary activities transformed by ownership into expressions of autonomy. The Morgengifu parchment rests safely in its box beneath your bed. You no longer need to touch it daily for reassurance. Its power has transferred to something within you, a quiet confidence that grows with each decision made, each challenge overcome. This is the true gift that has been passed down through generations of women, not just the legal right to property, but the knowledge that such right exists, that independence is possible. As you step outside into the crisp morning air, the future stretches before you, uncertain but yours to shape. The sun breaks over the horizon, painting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold. A new day dawns in Anglo-Saxon England, and you face it not as someone's daughter or widow, but as yourself, a woman with land, with means, with choices, all because of a gift given on a morning long ago, following a custom older than memory that recognized a fundamental truth, that women, too, deserve to own a piece of the world. And now, this story draws to a close. Take a deep breath as we gently move forward in time, into the next chapter of your journey. Drifting eastward across the continent, through mountain passes where spring meltwater carves ancient stones, your spirit finds itself in a land where the Mediterranean kisses rocky shores and olive groves climb terraced hillsides. Here in Catalonia, another woman's story unfolds beneath a different kind of law, one that cradles female autonomy in unexpected ways. The salt-tinged breeze lifts the edge of your veil as you stand on the balcony of your stone house in Barcelona. Below you, narrow streets wind between buildings of weathered sandstone, alive with the calls of vendors and the clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones. The year is 1213, and you are Elisenda, daughter of a prosperous merchant, newly married at 18 to Ramon, a rising guild member whose family's connections stretch throughout the Mediterranean trading networks. The marriage celebrations ended only yesterday, and your body still aches pleasantly from the dancing, your head slightly fuzzy from the strong Catalan wine that flowed freely at the feast. But it is not these sensations that occupy your thoughts as you look out over the awakening city. Rather, it is the memory of the formal proceedings that preceded the celebrations, the careful documentation of your dot. You can still feel the weight of your father's hand on your shoulder as he stood before the notary, declaring the substantial property and coin he was settling upon you as your dowry. You remember the scratch of the quill as the notary recorded each item: 300 silver marks, 2 houses in the merchant quarter, a vineyard in the hills outside the city, linens, and furnishings enough to establish a household of quality. With each addition to the list, you had felt something curious, a sense of substance, of gravity, as though your very being were becoming more solid, more defined. Elisenda. Ramon's voice breaks into your reverie. He joins you on the balcony, his tunic of fine wool brushing against your arm as he stands beside you. At 25, he is considered a fortunate match, handsome enough with his dark beard neatly trimmed in the Catalonian style, intelligent, ambitious, and from a family whose reputation for fair dealing is well established. Are you well this morning? You turn to him, noting how the early light catches the silver threads in his dark blue tunic. I am, just contemplating. You hesitate, unsure how to express the thoughts swirling in your mind. He smiles, revealing a dimple in his left cheek that had first caught your attention months ago when your families began negotiating the match. Contemplating what? The change in your circumstances, the mysteries of married life. There is gentle teasing in his tone. The dot, you reply simply. I had not realized fully what it would mean. Something shifts in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. Ah, yes. The Catalans have preserved something special in our laws, have they not? Your dot remains yours, safeguarded by me, but never becoming mine. He places a hand over yours where it rests on the stone balustrade. Your father drove a hard bargain on the insurance amount. You smile at this. The escriche, the insurance pledged by the groom against the dowry, had indeed been a point of intense negotiation. Ramon had eventually agreed to pledge property worth half the value of your substantial dot to be claimed if the marriage ended through his death or other circumstances. The amount spoke both to your family's standing and to his serious intentions. "Come," he says finally. "The day begins, and I would show you something." Curious, you follow him inside, through the main chamber, where servants are already busy clearing away evidence of last night's intimate family supper, down a narrow staircase to a room you had not yet explored. He produces a key from his belt and unlocks a sturdy wooden door, revealing a small chamber lined with shelves. Scrolls and bound ledgers fill most of the space, but it is to a particular iron-bound chest that he leads you. "This," he says, unlocking. "The chest with a second key is where I keep the most important documents of my household." And now, he reaches inside and withdraws a rolled parchment sealed with red wax. It holds the record of your dot. He places the document in your hands. Though you cannot read all the Latin legal terminology, you recognize enough to know this is the official record created yesterday, the document that details your dowry and establishes your rights to it under Catalan law. "I want you to know where this is kept," Ramon continues, his voice serious now, "and that you may access it whenever you wish. While I live, I will manage these properties as part of our household, but they remain legally yours. Should anything happen to me—" He pauses, making the sign of the cross reflexively at the mention of mortality. "Should anything happen, this document ensures your independence." The weight of the parchment in your hands seems suddenly greater. Unlike many regions where a woman's dowry passes completely into her husband's control upon marriage, becoming indistinguishable from his other property, Catalonia's laws maintain the separation. Your dot is yours, held in trust by your husband during marriage, but returnable to you in full upon his death or dissolution of the marriage. You think of your mother's friend Aldonza, widowed 5 years ago, where in other lands she might have been left dependent on the charity of her late husband's family or forced to retreat to a convent. In Barcelona, she had smoothly taken control of her returned dot, establishing herself as a woman of independent means, who now manages her own textile business. The memory brings with it a strange comfort. Not a wish for widowhood, but an appreciation for the safety net these laws provide. "Thank you for showing me this," you say, returning the document to him. He replaces it carefully in the chest, but passes you the small iron key. "Keep this," he says. "The chest should be accessible to both of us." The morning unfolds into your first full day as a married woman in your new household. Ramon leaves shortly after breakfast to attend to business at the Guildhall, leaving you to become acquainted with the servants and the rhythms of the house. The cook, Beatrice, a round-faced woman with capable hands and 20 years' service, to Ramon's family, shows you the kitchens and storerooms with a mixture of deference and practical instruction. The house steward, Ferrer, presents the household accounts with formal courtesy, explaining the system Ramon's family has used for generations. By midday, you find yourself in what is now your solar, a pleasant room with windows facing the inner courtyard where potted herbs grow in the Spanish sun. The furnishings here include items from your dot, tapestries worked by your own hands, cushions stuffed with aromatic herbs, a carved chest containing fine linens. Surrounding yourself with these familiar possessions brings comfort, a bridge between your old life and new. A knock at the door reveals Margarida, Ramon's widowed aunt, who has come to welcome you properly into the family. She is a striking woman in her 50s, dressed in quality woolens, dyed a rich burgundy, her grey-streaked hair partially visible beneath a fashionable headdress. The confident way she carries herself speaks of a woman comfortable in her position and power. "So, niece," she says, after the pleasantries have been exchanged, and servants have brought sweet wine and almond cakes. "Has my nephew shown you the document room yet?" You feel a flush of surprise at the direct question. This morning, yes. He showed me where my dot record is kept. She nods approvingly, taking a delicate sip of her wine. Good. Some men delay that conversation, as though speaking of such practicalities might invite misfortune. She sets down her cup and leans forward slightly. I was widowed at 30, you know. Geordie, Ramon's uncle, was taken by a fever that swept through the city. We had been married 12 years. Her eyes grow distant. With memory, I had brought a substantial dot to the marriage, not as generous as yours, I must say, and under our laws, it reverted to me immediately. While other widows might be scrambling for security or conceding to family pressures to remarry quickly, I had the luxury of grief. She speaks the last words with a curious emphasis, as though the space to experience sorrow fully were indeed a privilege. You never remarried? You ask, curious about this formidable woman who seems so complete in herself. I had offers, she replies with a small smile. Many offers, once the mourning period had passed. A widow with property is never without suitors. But I found I preferred my independence. She glances around the solar appraisingly. I established my own household, invested portions of my dot in trading ventures, with Ramon's father acting as my agent at first, then with Ramon himself as he came of age. The returns have been satisfactory. From the gleam in her eye and the quality of her dress, you suspect satisfactory is a significant understatement. You recall now hearing that Margarida is known in certain circles as a shrewd investor, whose backing is sought for ventures throughout the Mediterranean. The Usatges of Barcelona serves women well, she continues, referring to the code of laws that governs Catalonian life. Better than most legal systems in Christendom. Remember that, should you ever need to assert your rights. The rest of the visit passes in lighter conversation, advice about managing servants, gossip about other merchant families, recommendations for the best market stalls. Yet her earlier words linger in your mind long after she departs in a rustle of fine wool and the scent of rosewater. The days meld into weeks, weeks into months. Your marriage to Ramon proves to be more companionable than you had dared hope during the arrangement process. He is fair-minded and intelligent, eager to discuss his business dealings with you in the evenings, interested in your thoughts and suggestions. You find yourself blossoming in this atmosphere of respect, your confidence growing as you settle into your role as the wife of an increasingly prominent guild member. 6 months after your wedding, Ramon announces at supper that he must travel to Genoa to secure a new trading arrangement. I'll be gone at least 2 months, he explains, breaking a piece of bread to sop up the saffron-scented sauce from his plate. The winter seas are unpredictable, but this opportunity cannot wait until spring. You feel a flutter of anxiety at the prospect of his absence, but keep your expression composed. When do you leave? 3 days hence. The Santa Maria sails with the morning tide. He reaches across the table to cover your hand with his. I have something to discuss with you before I go. Later that evening, in the privacy of the document room, Ramon shows you additional papers, letters of authorization that grant you the right to act in his name during his absence. I've registered these with the guild notary and the city officials, he explains. You'll be able to make decisions about our household matters, collect payments due, even authorize certain types of business transactions if necessary. You stare at the documents, stunned by the level of trust they represent. Are you certain? Wouldn't your father or brother be more appropriate? They have their own concerns, he replies with a slight shrug. And I've observed how quickly you've grasped the workings of our business. You have a mind for figures and a good sense of people. He smiles. Besides, Much of what might need attention involves properties from your dot that I manage on your behalf. It seems only fitting that you should have a say. The weeks of his absence proved both challenging and unexpectedly satisfying. Initial nervousness gives way to quiet competence as you handle household management issues, oversee the collection of rents from the properties that formed part of your dot, and even negotiate an extension of payment terms with a merchant whose shipment has been delayed by storms. Each successful interaction builds your confidence. Each decision affirmed proves your capability. When Ramon returns, slightly thinner but triumphant in securing advantageous terms with the Genoese traders, he listens with evident approval as you recount your management of affairs during his absence. That night, as you lie together in the curtained bed, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on your bare shoulder, he murmurs, "You know, I've been thinking. Perhaps you should continue to oversee the properties from your dot directly. You clearly have the aptitude. The suggestion takes you by surprise. While Catalan law preserves your ownership of these properties, tradition still places their management firmly in the husband's hands during marriage. Is that common?" you ask carefully. You feel his shrug in the darkness. Perhaps not common, but not unheard of either. Your dot is substantial enough to require significant attention, and my trading concerns grow more complex. It would be practical to divide our efforts. He props himself up on one elbow, his face dimly visible in the faint moonlight filtering through the shutters. "Unless you would prefer not to take on such responsibilities." You think of the satisfaction you felt during his absence, the sense of purpose that came with making decisions and seeing their outcomes. "I would like to try," you answer honestly. And so begins an arrangement unusual enough to raise eyebrows among some of Barcelona's more traditional families, yet not so revolutionary as to cause genuine scandal. You assume direct management of the properties that came with your dot, collecting rents, arranging repairs, making improvements where warranted. Ramon continues his focus on expanding his trading network, with occasional joint ventures where your interests intersect. In the third year of your marriage, you give birth to a daughter, Constanza, followed 2 years later by a son, Bernat. Motherhood brings new dimensions to your life, but does not interrupt your management of your properties. Indeed, you find a deeper purpose in your work, knowing that your careful stewardship builds security for your children's future. Life settles into a rhythm of seasons, of children growing, of business cycles waxing and waning. Barcelona prospers under the rule of King Per II of Aragon, and the merchant class to which you belong rises in prominence and influence. Your household expands to include more servants. Your wardrobe now features silks imported from Byzantine territories, and Ramon's position in the guild advances to the inner council. 10 years pass in such relative contentment before the brutal unpredictability of medieval life intrudes. It begins with rumors from the port, tales of ships arriving with crews decimated by strange illness. Within weeks, the sickness spreads through the lower city, claiming lives with terrifying swiftness. Despite your household's relative isolation, in the better quarter and Ramon's immediate restrictions on the servants' movements, the invisible killer finds its way to your door. First, Beatriu the cook succumbs, her familiar robust figure ravaged in days by fever and swellings in her neck and armpits. Then, one of the house guards, then a scullery maid. You send the children to Ramon's sister's country estate outside the city walls, praying they remain untouched by the contagion. Ramon organizes fumigation of the house with herbs thought to purify the air, increases alms to the church to pray for protection, enforces strict washing rituals for anyone who must enter or leave the premises. It is not enough. You find him shivering. In the early morning, his nightshirt soaked with sweat despite the mild spring air. By midday, angry red swellings have appeared at his groin. By evening, delirium has him conversing with parents long dead. You sit beside him through the night, bathing his burning face with cool cloths, forcing sips of water between his cracked lips, whispering prayers into the darkness. When dawn comes, he seems to rally briefly, his eyes clearing as they find your face. Elisenda, he murmurs, his voice a brittle leaf of its usual timbre. The children? Safe, you assure him, clasping his hot hand between your cool ones. In the country with Joanna. He nods faintly, then with visible effort adds, the chest, document room, everything in order. His breathing grows more labored. You'll be provided for. You want to silence him, to deny the need for such discussion, but the merchant's daughter in you recognizes the practicality behind his words. Rest now, is all you say, pressing your lips to his forehead. He dies as Vespers bells ring across the city, now hollowed by disease and grief. The priest comes promptly, a testament to Ramon's standing, to administer last rites, though the body is taken for immediate burial rather than the usual lying in state. The plague shows no respect for mourning customs. Numb with grief and exhaustion, you somehow move through the immediate necessities. Messages sent to family members. Burial. Arrangements made. Servants' fears calmed. Only when the house finally falls silent in the deep of night do you allow yourself to weep. Not the demonstrative wailing expected at formal funerals, but quiet, racking sobs that seem torn from somewhere beneath your ribs. Morning comes regardless, indifferent to your loss. With it arrives Andreo, Ramon's elder brother, his face grave beneath his merchant's cap. Sister, he greets you, the formal kiss of peace on both cheeks, abbreviated by the fear of contagion that grips the city. I've come to help settle matters. His words are benign enough, but something in his tone, a presumption perhaps, sends a warning prickle along your spine. You lead him to the solar, where servants have prepared small cups of warmed wine against the chill of grief that seems to have settled in your bones. Ramon kept meticulous records, you begin, once the initial platitudes about God's will and the tragedy of untimely death have been exhausted. I can show you his most recent ledgers for the trading ventures you shared. Andreo nods, though his attention seems divided. Yes, that would be appropriate. And then we should discuss the transition of his other business interests, the household arrangements. He hesitates. The children will of course remain with my sister until the danger of disease has passed, but afterward, perhaps they would be better situated in my household. My wife would welcome them, and the boy especially should be raised with a firm male hand. Something cold settles in your stomach. My children will remain with me in their home, you state firmly. As for Ramon's business interests, those directly involving your partnership should certainly be reviewed together. His personal ventures I will oversee myself, as I have been trained in his methods. Andreo's eyebrows rise sharply. Elisenda, be reasonable. A woman alone cannot— I am not alone, you interrupt, your voice steadier than you feel. I have my own resources, as you well know. My dot was substantial, and according to Catalan law, it reverts to me in full upon Ramon's death. You see, a muscle twitch in his jaw. Of course, the legal formalities will be observed, but practical matters must be considered. Management of properties, investments, these require experience, connections, authority that women simply cannot. Cannot what, Andreo? The new voice from the doorway belongs to Margarida, Ramon's aunt, arriving unannounced but precisely, when needed. Cannot manage successfully for over a decade, as I have done. Cannot increase their holdings through prudent investment, as I have done. She glides into the room, every inch the formidable widow whose financial acumen has become legendary in certain circles. Andreu rises, clearly discomfited by her arrival. Aunt, this is a family matter. And am I not family? She counters smoothly, taking a seat beside you on the bench. Besides, I come on business. Elisenda and I have a joint investment in a silk shipment arriving next month from Constantinople. We need to discuss contingencies now that circumstances have changed. She turns to you, her expression softening fractionally. My dear, I was deeply grieved to hear about Ramon. He was the best of my nephews, no offense intended, Andreu, and his loss will be felt keenly. You feel a rush of gratitude for her presence, for the way she has so neatly aligned herself with you in this awkward confrontation. Thank you for coming, you manage, before returning your attention to Andreu. As I was saying, I will of course work with you on matters that directly involved your partnership with Ramon. For the rest, I am fully capable of managing my returned and other inheritance as Catalan law entitles me to do. Outmaneuvered for the moment, Andreu retreats to safer topics, the immediate funeral arrangements, notification of business associates, payments due or pending. Throughout the conversation, Margarita's presence serves as a silent reminder of what widowhood in Barcelona can mean. Not dependency, but autonomy secured through property rights preserved by the region's distinctive legal traditions. The following weeks are a blur of grief interspersed with practical matters. The plague's grip on the city slowly loosens, though the toll is devastating. Nearly a third of Barcelona's population lost to its ravages. You remain mercifully untouched by the disease, protected perhaps by whatever capricious fate spares some, while taking others seemingly at random. When the children finally return from the countryside, their small faces solemn with incomprehension at a world permanently altered by their father's absence, you hold them close and make a silent vow. They will never know the insecurity that orphans so often face. The property laws that protect your independence will shield them as well. The formal legal proceedings to recognize your reclaimed take place 40 days after Ramon's death, once the prescribed mourning period has begun to ease. You sit in the notary's chamber, dressed in the black woolens of widowhood, as the documents are reviewed and verified. The official reads aloud the detailed inventory from your marriage contract, each property, each sum, each valuable, and confirms its return to your sole ownership. Additionally, Ramon's will, prepared with typical foresight before his trading journey to Genoa 3 years earlier, bequeaths to you his personal property and a life interest in those possessions, technically meant for your son's eventual inheritance. This, combined with your substantial returned establishes you as a woman of significant means. Andreu's attempts to assert control have not ceased entirely, but they have been firmly rebuffed by the clear legal documentation and your own quiet determination. Margarita's continued mentorship provides both practical guidance and a powerful example of widowed independence. 6 months after Ramon's death, you sit in what was once his study, but is now undeniably yours. The autumn sun slants through the windows, illuminating the ledgers spread before you on the writing table. Your steward has just departed after reviewing the quarterly accounts for your properties, all showing modest profits despite the economic disruption caused by the plague. From the courtyard come the sounds of your children at play, their laughter a balm to your still healing heart. Constanza, at 7, has your quick mind for figures and Ramon's diplomatic charm. Bernat, 5 and sturdy, bears his father's features and your stubborn determination. They are adapting to their changed world with the resilience of the young, though Bernat still sometimes wakes crying for his father. You close the ledger and move to the window, watching them play a game involving pebbles and chalk lines drawn on the paving stones. The sight brings a bittersweet smile to your lips. Grief still visits unannounced, catching you at odd moments with a force that leaves you breathless, but it no longer consumes your days. A knock at the door reveals Miquel, your steward, returning with a visitor. "My lady, Donna Margarida has come to call. She says the matter is of some importance." Margarida sweeps in moments later, bringing with her the scent of cloves and the brisk energy that seems to characterize her movements. "Elisenda, good day to you. I've come with a proposition." She settles onto a chair without waiting for invitation, a liberty your friendship now permits. "What sort of proposition?" you ask, signaling to a servant to bring refreshments. "A venture. 3 ships to Alexandria, carrying Catalan woolens to trade for spices and silks. The potential returns are considerable." She leans forward slightly. "I've secured commitments from 2 other investors, but we need a 4th to spread the risk appropriately. You consider this carefully. It would be a significant investment, larger than any you've made independently before. Part of your dot includes funds that Ramon had already allocated to trading ventures, which you have maintained since his death. But this would be different, a decision made entirely on your own judgment, with considerable sums at stake." "Who are the other investors?" you inquire, buying time to think. "Ferrer de Villamur and Arnaud Bosque. Both are respected merchants known for their conservative but successful approach to trade. All widows and widowers," you observe with a small smile. "Is that significant?" Margarida's eyes crinkle with amusement. "Perhaps. Those of us who have weathered certain storms may be more careful navigators." She grows more serious. "Consider it, Elisenda. This is how real wealth is built. Not just preserved but expanded. Your children's future could be secured beyond anything Ramon might have imagined." After she departs, you find yourself drawn back to the document room. The chest contains not only the records of your dot, but now Ramon's will and testament as well. You run your fingers over the sealed parchments, thinking of all they represent. The Catalan system of property rights for women evolved from ancient Roman law, Visigothic customs, and local traditions, has provided what few medieval women elsewhere could claim: genuine economic independence. Your dot did not disappear into your husband's property upon marriage, only to be parceled out grudgingly if you outlived him. Instead, it remained legally yours, held in trust by your spouse but returnable intact, offering security regardless of your marital status. This retention of ownership rights created possibilities almost unimaginable to women in other regions. Widows in Barcelona need not throw themselves on the mercy of male relatives or rush into disadvantageous remarriages to secure their survival. Instead, like Margarida, and now like you, they could establish independent households, make business decisions, raise their children according to their own values, and even choose whether to remarry based on inclination rather than necessity. You think of your daughter, Constanza, still innocently playing in the courtyard below. When her time comes for marriage, she too will bring a dot to her husband. Already, you are setting aside funds and considering properties to include. And like you, she will retain her rights to that property throughout her life, protected by laws that recognize women as more than merely temporary vessels for wealth transferred between men. Returning to your study, you pull a fresh sheet of parchment toward you and begin drafting a letter to Margarida. You will join the Alexandria venture, albeit with a slightly more conservative sum than she likely hopes. It is a calculated risk, but one taken from a position of security that your returned dot provides. Later that evening, as you supervise your children's bedtime rituals, listening to Constanza practice her Latin prayers, checking Bernat's hands for the cleanliness he often neglects, you feel a moment of clarity amidst the lingering sorrow of recent months. Ramon is gone, but his children will thrive. His business interests will continue, albeit under different management. And you have emerged from the chrysalis of marriage not diminished by widowhood, but transformed into something entirely your own. The dot system that distinguished Catalonian law from much of medieval Europe has given you what women in England, France, or German territories could rarely claim: the opportunity to define yourself beyond your relationships to men, not merely daughter, wife, or widow, but property owner, investor, decision maker. As you tuck the blankets around your sleeping children and move through the quiet house, checking that shutters are secured and candles extinguished, you acknowledge a truth that the legal documents in your chest represent but cannot fully express. Property rights have granted you something more fundamental than material security. They have granted you agency in a world that rarely acknowledges such for women. The Alexandria venture proves successful beyond even Margarida's optimistic projections. Your initial investment returns nearly triple its value when the ships dock safely the following year, their holds laden with pepper, cinnamon, ginger, and silks that command premium prices in Barcelona's markets. This success leads to further investments. Cautious at first, then increasingly confident as your understanding of trade networks deepens. 3 years into your widowhood, you have not only maintained the value of your return dot, but substantially increased it. The original properties continue to provide steady rental income, while your trading ventures generate capital for new opportunities. You have added another house to your holdings, a strategic purchase near the cathedral, and established a small silk-working enterprise employing 5 women to produce fine veils that have become popular among the city's elite. Suitors begin to appear once your formal mourning period ends. Merchants seeking advantageous connections, widowers needing mothers for their children, younger sons of minor nobility attracted by your wealth. Some are dismissed immediately. Others you entertain politely over meals where conversation reveals their characters and intentions. None so far has tempted you to surrender the independence you have grown to value. Will you never remarry? Your sister-in-law Joanna asks during a family gathering to celebrate Bernat's 8th birthday. The question is posed without judgment, merely curiosity. You watch your children playing with their cousins in the garden beyond the hall. Constanza, now a graceful 10-year-old, helping to organize the younger ones in some elaborate game. Perhaps someday, you reply, but not from necessity, only from choice. Joanna follows your gaze to the children. They are fortunate, she observes. Many orphaned of their fathers fare far worse. They are not orphans, you correct gently. They have me. Of course, she amends quickly. I only meant, in many families, the loss of the father would mean precarious circumstances indeed. Perhaps separation from their mother if she had to return to her family or enter a convent. But your dot was substantial, and our laws protect your rights to it. You nod, understanding her meaning. We are fortunate to live under the usaces of Barcelona, rather than the legal codes of other regions. Here, a woman may retain something, of herself through property, regardless of whether she is daughter, wife, or widow. Later that night, as you sit by the window of your bedchamber, brushing out your hair, still dark but now threaded with occasional silver, you reflect on the journey from that morning on the balcony when, as a newly married young woman, you first contemplated the meaning of your dot. How little you understood then of what that property would come to represent. Not merely material security, but the foundation of genuine autonomy. The moon casts silver light across the rooftops of Barcelona, a city where women like you can own. Buildings beneath that same moon collect rents from tenants, invest in ventures that sail to distant shores, decide the course of their own lives with a freedom rare in this medieval age. Not complete freedom. The world still places many constraints on those born female, but a measure of independence built on the solid ground of property rights preserved through ancient custom and codified law. Across most of medieval Europe, women's property rights were increasingly restricted as the Middle Ages progressed. Common law in England, for instance, developed the concept of coverture, where a woman's legal existence was covered by her husband, her property becoming his upon marriage. Similar restrictions evolved in French and Germanic territories, yet, here in Catalonia, drawing on older Roman legal traditions and local customs, women maintain their property rights through the ingenious mechanism of the dot. Not merely a dowry that transferred female-associated wealth to male control, but a protected asset that remained fundamentally connected to the woman herself throughout her life. You set down your brush and move to the small writing desk where you keep your personal correspondence and private accounts separate from the business ledgers in the study below. From a locked drawer, you withdraw a small book bound in tooled leather, a gift from Ramon on the birth of your daughter. In it, you have begun recording not financial transactions but memories, observations and lessons for Constanza to read. When she reaches adulthood, by candlelight, you add a new entry. Property gives more than shelter or sustenance, my daughter. It gives voice when you might otherwise be silenced, choice when you might otherwise be commanded, dignity when you might otherwise be diminished. When the time comes for your own marriage, remember that your dot is not merely goods and coin, passing from your father's house to your husband's. It is the foundation of your independent personhood, protected by our laws for your security. Guard it well, manage it wisely, and it will grant you possibilities that many women never know. You close the book, seal the drawer, and prepare for sleep. Tomorrow brings meetings with tenants, decisions about repairs to the roof of your country, vineyard house, discussions with your agent about a potential investment in a new glass-making enterprise. The responsibilities are many, but they are yours by choice and by right, secured through a property system that recognized, however imperfectly, that women too deserved economic citizenship in the medieval world. As you drift towards sleep, you find yourself grateful for the ancient legal traditions that evolved into Catalonia's unique property rights for women. Those who first established these customs could never have imagined your particular story. A merchant's widow, managing investments, raising children, declining suitors, building wealth independently in 13th century Barcelona. Yet their innate recognition of women's right to own laid the groundwork for your reality, creating space for autonomy in an era when such was rarely granted to those of your gender. The dot, so much more than a dowry, so much more than a gift. It was, in its way, the first acknowledgement that women deserved economic personhood in their own right, and from that acknowledgement flowed possibilities that would eventually, centuries later, expand into fuller concepts of women's rights and independence. In the quiet darkness of your bedchamber, secure in your own home, surrounded by the fruits of your own management and decision-making. You silently honor those long-forgotten lawmakers and custom builders who preserved for Catalonian women what was lost to so many others, the right to own, and through ownership, the right to choose. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. Mist rises from the lagoon as your spirit drifts across the azure waters of the Mediterranean, finally settling among the marble palaces and winding canals of Venice. Here, amid the gentle lapping of gondolas against wooden mooring posts and the distant call of merchants, another story of female ingenuity unfolds, where clever women transformed rigid traditions into pathways of influence through the subtle power of property. The scent of salt water mingles with exotic spices as you open the shutters of your bedchamber window, leaning out slightly to watch the early morning activity on the canal below. Gondolas glide past bearing vegetables from nearby islands, while porters unload bolts of fabric at a neighboring palazzo. The year is 1348, and you are Caterina Morosini, 20 years old, and recently married to Marco Venier, scion of one of Venice's prominent merchant families. Your fingers trace the intricate carved marble of the window frame, cool and smooth beneath your touch. The palazzo you now call home has belonged to the Venier family for 3 generations. Its waterfront location in the San Marco district a testament to their wealth and status among Venice's elite mercantile class. Inside, Flemish tapestries hang on walls alongside Byzantine icons. Mamluk carpets cover the terrazzo floors, and glass from Murano catches the light in kaleidoscopic brilliance, all showcasing the reach of Venetian trade networks that stretch from northern Europe to the distant edges of the known world. The heavy brocade of your morning robe weighs on your shoulders as you turn back into the room, the fabric itself a product of the silk workshops your own family has operated for decades. As a daughter of the Morosini, another ancient Venetian clan, you were raised understanding that marriage was as much a business merger as a personal union. What you hadn't anticipated was how your substantial dowry, your dot in the Venetian dialect, would continue to influence your life even after the marriage contracts were sealed. A knock at the door announces your lady's maid, Lucia, bringing warm water for washing, and news that your mother-in-law requests your presence in her private chambers once you are dressed. You nod, experiencing the familiar mixture of respect and apprehension that Donna Elisabetta Venier inspires in everyone from servants to prominent senators. As Lucia helps you into a gown of deep blue silk trimmed with silver thread, one of the many fine garments included in your dowry, you reflect on the complexity of property arrangements that bind your life. Unlike many regions of Europe where a woman's dowry passed completely into her husband's control upon marriage, Venice maintains distinctive traditions that preserve aspects of your connection to the assets you brought into the union. Your dot was exceptional even by the standards of Venice's merchant aristocracy. 15,000 ducats in coin, properties including a country estate on the mainland and shares in 2 trading vessels, furnishings and jewelry of substantial value, and, most significantly, a silent partnership in your family's silk manufactory. The documents establishing this dowry specified that while your husband would manage these assets during the marriage, they remained fundamentally yours, to be returned in full should the marriage end through his death. More unusually, thanks to your father's foresight and respect for your business acumen, the Silk Workshop partnership included a specific clause. Decisions regarding that investment would require your explicit consent. It was this clause that had prompted your mother-in-law's summons this morning. You make your way through the palazzo's grand rooms, nodding to servants who pause respectfully as you pass. The Venier household runs with impressive efficiency under Donna Elisabeta's exacting supervision, a standard you are expected to maintain when you eventually assume the mantle of senior woman of the house. For now, as a new bride, you occupy the ambiguous position of being neither fully daughter nor fully mistress. Donna Elisabeta's chambers reflect her status, slightly removed from the main household activities, yet positioned to monitor all that occurs. The walls are hung with silk damask in a rich burgundy that flatters her still handsome features. At 60, your mother-in-law remains a formidable presence in both the family and Venetian society. Her widow's blacks worn with an elegance that transforms mourning into majesty. "Good morning, daughter," she greets you, not rising from her carved chair, but gesturing for you to be seated on a nearby cushioned bench. "I trust you slept well?" "Yes, Madonna, thank you," you respond with appropriate deference. Despite 15 years of widowhood, Donna Elisabetta has maintained complete control over the Venier family affairs, managing properties, arranging advantageous marriages for her children, and expanding the family's trading interests throughout the Mediterranean and beyond. Her continued authority stems partially from Venetian respect for experienced widows, but primarily from her exceptional business acumen. She studies you for a moment, her dark eyes missing nothing. "Marco tells me your father has proposed a significant expansion of the silk workshops included in your dote, an investment in new looms and additional skilled workers from Lucca." You nod, unsurprised that this conversation has come so directly to business matters. In Venice, especially among the mercantile nobility, pleasantries rarely delay discussion of profit and investment for long. "The opportunity is considerable," you explain. "The weavers from Lucca bring techniques for producing cloth of gold that fetches premium prices in both Western courts and Eastern markets. My father believes we could double the workshop's output within 2 years." Something like approval flickers across Donna Elisabetta's features. Your father has good instincts. The demand for luxurious silks shows no signs of diminishing. She pauses, fingers tapping thoughtfully on the arm of her chair. "What interests me, however, is the unusual arrangement regarding this particular asset in your dowry. Marco would normally make such decisions without consultation, yet he tells me your consent is specifically required." You feel a flutter of nervousness, but keep your expression composed. "My father has always included his daughters in discussions of the family business. I've been keeping accounts for the silk workshop since I was 12. He felt my knowledge would be valuable in managing this specific investment." Rather than the disapproval you half expected, Donna Elisabetta's lips curve in a small smile. "Your father is wiser than most men. Tell me, if this were solely your decision, would you approve the expansion?" The question feels like a test, one whose parameters you cannot quite determine. You choose honesty. "I would, but with one modification. I would allocate a portion of the investment specifically to developing patterns that incorporate both Byzantine motifs and Islamic geometric designs. Our samples show these hybrid styles are uniquely appealing to buyers from different cultural backgrounds." Donna Elisabetta's eyebrows rise slightly. "An interesting assessment. And what does Marco think of this suggestion?" "We haven't discussed the specific designs," you admit. "Only the general concept of expansion." She nods slowly. "Venice thrives because we stand at the crossroads of worlds, taking the best from each to create something uniquely ours." She rises, moving to a carved chest near her writing desk. From it, she withdraws a small book bound in tooled leather, its pages evident with use. This belonged to my mother. When I married into the Venier family, she gave it to me. She places it in your hands. Opening it carefully, you discover not a devotional text as you had expected, but a ledger filled with neat figures, annotations, and occasional commentary written in a woman's flowing hand. My mother managed her dote investments independently throughout her marriage and widowhood, Donna Elisabetta explains, as I have done since my husband's death. Venice grants its women certain flexibilities that other places do not. Your father has ensured you have legal standing regarding the silk workshop. I suggest you use it wisely. You look up from the ledger, surprised by this apparent alliance. You support my involvement in the business decisions. Venice is built on water, daughter. Its foundations must be adaptable or they crumble. The same is true of family fortunes. Her voice takes on a practical edge. Men conduct business in public, at the Rialto, in government halls, on trading vessels. But much of Venice's true commerce happens through connections women maintain in private chambers, through information exchanged during social calls, through observations made at church gatherings. She returns to her seat, arranging her skirts with practiced precision. Tell Marco you have my support for the expansion, including your design modifications, and begin keeping your own ledger, as my mother did. Knowledge recorded becomes power preserved. The conversation shifts to more conventional household matters. Menus for an upcoming dinner hosting a Byzantine trade delegation. Plans for the coming carnival celebrations. Concerns about a lady's maid whose behavior has become questionable. Yet as you leave her chambers an hour later, it is the unexpected alliance around your dote that occupies your thoughts. Later that afternoon, you find Marco in his study overlooking the Grand Canal. Correspondence from trading partners in Constantinople spread across his desk. At 26, your husband cuts an impressive figure in his rich merchant's robes, his dark beard neatly trimmed in the current fashion. Your arrangement had been thoroughly negotiated between families, but you found genuine affection growing between you during these early months of marriage. My mother tells me you discussed the silk workshop expansion, he says as you enter, rising to kiss you in greeting. She supports it, you confirm, moving to stand beside him at the window. Below, a large trading galley moves majestically along the canal, its deck piled with goods newly arrived from distant shores. Marco seems unsurprised by his mother's endorsement. She rarely opposes profitable ventures. He turns to study your profile. What of your suggestion regarding the design patterns? She mentioned you had specific ideas. You feel a momentary uncertainty. Your mother-in-law's approval is one thing, your husband's potential resistance to your involvement quite another. Venetian wives generally enjoy more practical freedom than women elsewhere in Europe, but traditions still place business decisions firmly in male hands. The hybrid designs combining Eastern and Western elements have shown particular promise, you explain carefully. I thought perhaps allocating specific resources toward developing that line might maximize our returns. To your relief, Marco nods thoughtfully. Logical. The Venetian advantage has always been our position between worlds. He gestures to the year correspondence on his desk. My contacts in Constantinople specifically request silks that won't mark them as too Western to Eastern eyes, nor too Eastern to Western sensibilities. He picks up a quill, making a note in the margin of a document. I'll include your recommendation in my response to your father. Since your consent is required for changes to this particular investment, we should formalize the agreement soon. There is no resentment in his tone regarding the unusual arrangement that gives you voice in this decision. Only practical acceptance. It strikes you then how Venetian this attitude is. Pragmatic, focused on results, rather than rigid traditions. If including a wife's insights leads to greater profits, then Venetian husbands, unlike many of their counterparts elsewhere, are willing to accommodate such involvement. The silk workshop expansion proceeds with remarkable success over the following months. The craftsmen recruited from Lucca integrate smoothly with the existing Venetian workers, bringing techniques for creating cloth of gold so fine it can be passed through a signet ring despite its metallic content. Your suggested hybrid designs prove particularly popular, with orders coming from as far as the French royal court and the Mamluk Sultan's palace in Cairo. More surprising is how your role evolves beyond the initial approval of investment. Marco increasingly brings questions to you regarding the workshop's operations, not merely seeking consent, but actively soliciting your perspective on everything from pricing strategies to quality control. Your childhood experience keeping the workshop accounts proves valuable, but so too does your aesthetic judgment about which designs might appeal to particular markets. Behind this development, you suspect Donna Elisabetta's influence. You occasionally glimpse her watching your interactions with Marco with what appears to be calculating approval. More than once, you've been invited to join discussions with visiting merchants that would typically exclude women, always at her subtle instigation. She is grooming you, not just as the future senior woman of the household, but as a partner in the family's commercial interests. One cool autumn evening, as you sit with your embroidery frame near the fire in the family's private salon, Marco enters with news that sends ripples through your carefully constructed world. "I must go to Alexandria," he announces. "One of our most important shipments has been held at the customs house there under questionable circumstances. Personal intervention is required." Donna Elisabetta looks up sharply from the household accounts she is reviewing. "How long?" 3 months, perhaps 4 if winter storms delay the return journey. He turns to you. "I had hoped to postpone such travel until after the birth of our child." Your hand moves instinctively to your belly, where your first child, just beginning to show beneath your loose house gown, grows steadily. The pregnancy, confirmed by the midwife 2 months ago, has brought joy to the household and strengthened your position within the family hierarchy. "When would you leave?" you ask, setting aside your needlework. "The San Marco sails with the morning tide in 3 days." Marco kneels beside your chair, taking your hand. "I would not go if there were any alternative, but the shipment includes spices and pigments worth more than 10,000 ducats. We cannot afford such a loss." Donna Elisabetta closes her ledger with a decisive snap. "It is unfortunate timing but necessary. Business must be attended to." She fixes her son with a penetrating gaze. "You will need to leave matters in order here. The quarterly payments from the rental properties come due during your absence, and decisions about the new silk patterns cannot wait for your return if we are to meet the Easter demand." Marco nods. "I had thought Pietro might handle the property matters." He refers to his younger brother, who has been learning the family business, but has shown more enthusiasm for Venetian social life than commercial responsibilities. "Pietro lacks attention to detail," his mother responds with blunt assessment. "The rental properties are simple enough, yes, but the silk workshop." She lets the sentence hang meaningfully. Marco's gaze shifts to you, consideration in his dark eyes. The workshop falls under Caterina's dote, perhaps between mother's experience and Caterina's knowledge of that specific business. You feel a sudden alertness, like a hawk sensing shifting winds that might lift it higher. "I've been working with Master Thomas on the new pattern designs," you offer carefully, "and I'm familiar with the workshop's accounts." Donna Elisabetta's expression remains impassive, but you detect approval in the slight inclination of her head. It would be appropriate. The legal structure of her dote gives her standing regarding those decisions in any case. And so it is arranged, with remarkably little debate. Letters of authorization are drawn up, empowering you to act regarding the silk workshop not merely as consenting partner, but as primary decision-maker during Marco's absence. Donna Elisabetta will oversee broader family interests, with Pietro handling routine matters under her supervision, while you take direct responsibility for the business that forms the most valuable part of your dote. The morning of Marco's departure dawns misty and cool, the lagoon a pearl-grey expanse beyond the palazzo windows. You accompany him to the private water gate, where a gondola waits to take him to the trading galley, anchored in the basin of San Marco. His farewell is tender, a hand resting briefly on your growing belly, a promise to return before the child's birth if humanly possible. A kiss that lingers with unspoken concerns about the dangers of Mediterranean travel. As the gondola pulls away, Donna Elisabetta's hand settles on your shoulder. "Come," she says, simply. There is much to do. The following weeks reveal dimensions of Venetian married women's property rights that you had understood intellectually, but now experience directly. While most European legal systems increasingly restricted female property ownership, Venice maintained distinctive traditions that created unexpected spaces for women's economic agency. Your mornings now begin with visits to the silk workshop, located near the Rialto Bridge. The master craftsman, initially startled to receive direct instruction from the owner's daughter, rather than a male representative, quickly adjust to the arrangement. Your familiarity with the technical aspects of silk production, combined with your aesthetic judgment regarding patterns and color combinations, soon earns their professional respect. Each afternoon finds you in what has become a temporary office. Within the palazzo, a small chamber adjoining Donna Elisabetta's quarters, where you review accounts, correspond with buyers, and make decisions about resource allocation. Your mother-in-law often joins these sessions, offering guidance that blends commercial wisdom with shrewd observations about navigating the gendered expectations of Venetian business culture. Never appear to be making decisions hastily or emotionally, she advises during one such meeting. Men expect women to be governed by sentiment rather than calculation. Use their expectation as an advantage. Take time, appear to consult, then do exactly as your judgment dictates. When representatives from the French royal court arrive seeking exclusive patterns for ceremonial garments, you receive them in the palazzo's formal reception room. Their surprise at negotiating with a woman, and a visibly pregnant one at that, quickly gives way to respect as you demonstrate detailed knowledge of both the technical capabilities of your workshop and the current styles favored in French court circles. You are unusually involved in your husband's business affairs, Madonna Venier, observes the senior French merchant as contracts are being finalized. Not my husband's affairs, but my own, you correct politely. The silk workshop forms part of my dote, my dowry, which under Venetian custom remains my property, though managed jointly during marriage. The Frenchman's eyebrows rise. A curious arrangement. In Paris, a woman's dowry becomes her husband's property absolutely upon marriage. Venice has found that preserving women's property rights serves the Republic's commercial interests, remarks Donna Elisabetta, who has joined the final negotiations. Capital remains productive regardless of whether it is managed by male or female hands. This pragmatic Venetian approach becomes increasingly clear as weeks stretch into months. While never explicitly endorsing female equality, a concept that would be alien to medieval thinking, Venice's commercial culture and legal traditions have evolved to value practical results over rigid gender hierarchies. A woman who demonstrates business acumen is allowed to exercise it, particularly when operating within the sphere of her dote investments. Your pregnancy advances as winter settles over the lagoon city. The child moves vigorously beneath your heart as you conduct business from a cushioned chair near the fire, your body changing while your mind remains focused on commercial calculations. The silk workshop thrives under your direction, with production increasing and new markets opening through connections made at social gatherings with other prominent merchant families. It is at one such gathering, a dinner hosted by the Contarini family to celebrate Epiphany, that you encounter Chiara Dandolo, a widow whose reputation for financial independence is well known throughout Venice. Though approaching 60, she maintains a commanding presence, her intelligent eyes set in a face whose lines speak of experience rather than mere age. So you are the Morosini daughter who has taken personal charge of her dote investments, she observes when you find yourselves momentarily separated from the main group of guests. Venice whispers about your success with the silk workshop. You feel a flush of pride tempered by modesty. The workshop was already well established. I've merely guided certain expansions during my husband's absence. Chiara smiles knowingly. Just as I merely guided the spice import business that tripled my late husband's estate value. She takes a sip of sweet wine. Venice allows us spaces that exist nowhere else, you know. My grandmother conducted business in Flanders and Bruges through factors who never realized their instructions came from a woman's pen. My mother expanded our property holdings until we owned structures on 3 different canals. And She gives a small shrug that somehow conveys immense satisfaction. I have built networks that connect us to trading partners from Damascus to London. All through dope management, you ask, genuinely curious about how her authority evolved. It begins there, she confirms. The dote gives us legal standing, a foot in the door of commerce that women elsewhere cannot access. Once that door opens, how widely depends on ability and circumstance. She studies your face. Your husband is fortunate. Many men waste the commercial talents of their wives out of misplaced pride or tradition. Before you can respond, a servant approaches with urgency. Madonna Venier, you are needed at home immediately. A messenger has arrived from Alexandria. Your heart seems to skip several beats. Marco has been gone over 3 months now. News could be good or devastating. With hasty apologies to your hostess and a parting nod to Chiara Dandolo, you allow yourself to be escorted to a waiting gondola. At the palazzo, Donna Elisabetta awaits in the main hall, her face betraying nothing as she dismisses the servants with a gesture. Marco's ship encountered pirates near Crete, she says without preamble once you are alone. There was a battle. The San Marco prevailed, but with damage that required repairs at Chania. You grip the back of a chair, steadying yourself. And Marco, wounded but recovering. Not severely. Her voice remains level, though you detect relief beneath the composure. The messenger reports he has successfully resolved the customs dispute in Alexandria. The shipment has been released and should arrive with substantial profit despite the delays. You close your eyes briefly, offering silent thanks for his safety. When will he return? The ship sails from Crete within the week, barring further incidents or contrary winds. They should reach Venice by early February. She gestures for you to sit, concern finally showing as she notes your pallor. The child. Active, you assure her, placing a hand on your now substantial belly. The midwife says 3 weeks, perhaps 4. Donna Elisabetta nods. Marco should return before the birth then. Good. She pours a small cup of watered wine and hands it to you. In the meantime, we continue as we have been. The Silk Workshop's spring commission for the Doge's ceremonial robes cannot be delayed, regardless of personal matters. Her matter-of-fact tone centers you, providing a framework of normalcy amidst emotional turbulence. This, too, is part of Venetian commercial women's legacy. The ability to balance personal concerns with business necessities, never allowing the former to completely overshadow the latter. Marco returns on a bright February morning, the San Marcos, distinctive red and gold sails visible from miles away as it approaches through the lagoon. You wait at the watergate with Donna Elisabetta and Pietro, your body heavy with child, your heart lighter than it has been in months. When he steps from the gondola that brings him from the ship to the palazzo, you note the new lines in his face, a slight favoring of his left side that speaks of healing wounds, but most of all the joy in his eyes as they meet yours. "You've grown," he says softly, after formal greetings have been exchanged, his hand coming to rest on the swell of your belly. "In more ways than one," his mother comments with dry humor. "Come inside. There is much to tell you about events during your absence." The family retires to a private sitting room where servants bring refreshments. Marco's account of his journey, the diplomatic resolution in Alexandria, the pirate attack in which he took a sword cut to the ribs, the unexpected trading opportunities discovered in Crete during repairs, occupies the first hour. Then attention turns to domestic matters. The Silk Workshop has secured 3 major new commissions, Donna Elisabetta informs him, including ceremonial vestments for the Bishop of Milan and a complete set of hangings for the French ambassador's residence. Marco's eyebrows rise appreciatively. "Impressive. And the new designs we discussed before my departure?" "Successfully implemented," you reply. The master craftsmen have perfected the technique for incorporating gold thread into the Byzantine Islamic hybrid patterns. We've already received inquiries from as far as the English court. As the conversation continues, you become aware of a subtle shift in how Marco addresses you, a new note of professional respect layered atop the personal affection. He asks detailed questions about production costs, listens attentively to your assessments of market trends, and nods thoughtfully at your suggestions for future expansion. Later, when you are alone in your chambers, he approaches where you stand by the window. "My mother tells me you have managed the workshop with remarkable skill," he says, embracing you from behind, his hands cradling your belly. Production increased by nearly 30%, while costs rose only 18%. Even experienced merchants would consider that a triumph. You lean back against him, enjoying his warmth after months of absence. "I had excellent guidance from your mother. And your own considerable talents," he counters. "The legal structure of your dote gave you authority during my absence, but it was your ability that turned that authority into profit." He turns you gently to face him. "I find myself married to not just a beautiful woman, but a business partner of unexpected value." The observation, delivered with genuine admiration rather than condescension, crystallizes something you've been coming to understand throughout these months of independent management. In Venice, women's property rights through the dote system have evolved into something more profound than mere financial security. They have become a foundation for genuine participation in the commercial life that defines the Republic. Your first child, a daughter you name Sophia, arrives 10 days later. The birth is difficult but ultimately successful, with both mother and child emerging healthy. As you recover your strength in the weeks that follow, a new family pattern emerges. While you are no longer solely responsible for the Silk Workshop, neither do you return to the purely domestic role that might be expected elsewhere in Europe. Instead, Marco implements a genuine partnership, bringing important decisions to your shared evening hours, where you discuss options while Sophia sleeps in her cradle nearby. This arrangement is not revolutionary in Venetian context. Indeed, you gradually become aware that similar partnerships exist in many of the city's leading merchant families. Wives whose dote includes business interests commonly maintain involvement in those specific ventures, their property rights providing the initial justification for participation that would otherwise be considered improper. At a christening celebration, for the son of a neighbouring family when Sophia is nearly 6 months old, you find yourself once again in conversation with Chiara Dandolo. The older woman observes you with knowing eyes. "Motherhood suits you," she comments, "as does commercial success. Your workshop's new patterns are much discussed." You smile, bouncing Sophia gently in your arms as she grows restless. The success belongs to many hands: the master craftsman, my husband's business connections, my mother-in-law's guidance. "And your vision," Chiara adds firmly. "Never discount your own contributions, my dear. That is the first lesson every Venetian woman of business must learn." She glances across the room to where your mother-in-law is engaged in conversation with several senators' wives. "Elisabetta has taught you well, I see. She understands the delicate balance we must maintain." "Balance?" you query. "Between adhering to social expectations and exercising commercial agency. Between respecting tradition and seizing opportunity." Chiara's voice drops slightly. "Venice grants its women unusual freedoms, but always within certain boundaries. We acknowledge these boundaries publicly, while quietly expanding them through practical action." Her words resonate with your experiences over the past year. You have never publicly challenged the patriarchal structure of Venetian society, yet through the mechanism of dote management, you have exercised genuine economic power. The legal fiction that you are merely protecting your property interest, while your husband is absent, has provided space for demonstrating business capabilities that might otherwise remain dormant. "Is it always this way?" you ask. The dote as starting point for wider involvement. Chiara considers this. Often, though not invariably, some husbands resist their wives' participation regardless of legal rights. Some wives have no interest in commercial matters. She smiles slightly. But for those with inclination and opportunity, yes, the dote becomes the foundation from which women build monuments to their own capabilities, even if those monuments remain largely invisible to the wider world. In the years that follow, this pattern becomes your lived reality. Venice's prosperity continues to grow, with Marco's trading ventures expanding to new territories, and your silk workshop producing increasingly sought-after luxury goods. 2 more children join your family, a son named Antonio and another daughter, Elena. Your household management responsibilities increase proportionally, yet your involvement in the commercial sphere never diminishes. What evolves is a system of complementary expertise. Marco focuses on external matters, negotiating with overseas partners, securing favorable shipping terms, navigating the complex politics of international trade. You oversee the silk production, developing new designs, managing worker relations, and ensuring quality control. Together with Donna Elisabetta, who shows no signs of relinquishing her oversight of family interests despite advancing age, you form a triumvirate that steers the combined Venier-Morosini fortunes toward ever greater prosperity. The arrangement is not unique in Venice, where women's property rights have created similar partnerships in many prominent families. Unlike Florence, where women's dowries became fully incorporated into husbands' estates, or English territories where the doctrine of coverture effectively erased married women's legal existence, Venice maintained distinctive traditions that preserved female property ownership through the dote system. This preservation stemmed not from any early concept of women's rights, but from pragmatic commercial considerations. Venice's mercantile empire required maximizing every available resource, including the business talents of its women, by allowing wives continued connection to their dote assets. Venetian law inadvertently created space for female economic agency that existed nowhere else in medieval Europe at such scale. The consequences are visible throughout the city for those with eyes to see. Widows managing substantial business interests without male oversight. Wives like yourself participating actively in family commercial decisions. Even unmarried women controlling property through inheritance. Protected by a legal system that values commercial continuity above rigid gender hierarchies. On a warm June evening in your 15th year of marriage, you sit in the rooftop loggia of your palazzo, watching the sunset paint Venice's distinctive skyline in shades of gold and rose. Marco joins you, bringing cups of chilled wine and the day's correspondence. The shipment to Constantinople has arrived safely, he reports, settling beside you on the marble bench. And your new apprentices from Sicily have reached Mestre. They should arrive in the city tomorrow. You nod, pleased at both pieces of news. The workshop is ready for them. Master Thomas has prepared the special looms for their particular technique. Companionable silence falls between you as the sky deepens toward indigo, and lamplights begin to twinkle across the city. From below come the sounds of your children at their evening lessons. Sophia, now 14, and already showing remarkable artistic talent. Antonio, 11 and serious-minded like his father. Elena, 8 and bubbling with curiosity about everything from astronomy to commerce. I've been thinking about Sophia's future, Marco says finally. Several families have already made indirect inquiries about potential matches. You feel a mother's instinctive resistance to the idea. 14 seems so young, but acknowledge the practical reality. Marriages in your social class are arranged years in advance, with negotiations about dowries and contracts often beginning well before the actual ceremony takes place. She's gifted with design, you observe. Her pattern, suggestions have already been adopted by the workshop craftsman. Marco nods. I was thinking her dote might include a specific interest in the workshop, similar to what your father arranged for you, with provisions for her continued involvement regardless of whom she marries. Warmth spreads through your chest at this suggestion, not just for what it means for Sophia's future security, but for what it reveals about Marco's evolution. He has moved from merely accepting your commercial involvement to actively planning similar opportunities for your daughter. That would be appropriate, you agree, trying to keep emotion from your voice. Her talents shouldn't be lost simply because she marries. Venice cannot afford to waste such abilities, he says pragmatically. Male or female? After a moment's hesitation, he adds, I've been considering something similar for Elena as well, though perhaps in a different direction. She shows remarkable aptitude for figures. Perhaps a share in one of our shipping ventures would suit her temperament. As darkness settles fully over the lagoon, you reflect on the quiet revolution that has occurred within your own household. Microcosm of the larger Venetian approach to women's property and commercial engagement. Without ever explicitly challenging traditional gender roles, the practical mechanisms of the dote system have created space for genuine female economic agency. Your daughters will inherit not just property, but opportunity. The chance to develop and apply their talents within a system that values commercial success above strict adherence to gender limitations. They will face constraints unknown to their brother, certainly, but far fewer than their counterparts in other European societies. And so the pattern continues, passing from mother to daughter across generations of Venetian women. The dote, ostensibly designed merely to provide financial support in widowhood, becomes instead a foundation for active participation in the commercial life that defines the Republic. Property rights create space for agency. Agency demonstrates capability. Capability gradually transforms expectations, at least within the pragmatic confines of Venetian business culture. Not a revolution proclaimed with manifestos or fought with weapons, but a quiet evolution built on careful management of seemingly mundane legal structures. In this way, medieval Venetian women became among the first in post-Roman Europe to exercise genuine economic power through property ownership, their achievements largely invisible to conventional history, yet fundamental to the commercial success that made Venice the jewel of the Adriatic. As you sip your wine beside your husband in the gathering darkness, overlooking a city built on water and commerce and practical adaptation, you silently acknowledge the generations of women whose careful management of their dote created the foundation upon which you now stand. Your grandmother, your mother, yourself, your daughters, links in a chain of female property ownership that stretches backward into history and forward into a future yet unwritten. Venice's commercial pragmatism created space for women's economic agency that existed nowhere else in medieval Europe at comparable scale. Through the distinctive mechanism of the dote, a dowry that remained legally connected to the woman herself rather than being fully absorbed into her husband's estate, Venetian society inadvertently established one of history's earliest platforms for female participation in sophisticated commercial activities. The system was never designed with women's autonomy as its goal. Rather, it evolved to protect family assets and ensure efficient capital utilization in a mercantile republic where commercial success took precedence over rigid ideological positions. Yet its practical effect was the preservation of property rights that allowed women like you to develop and exercise business talents that would have remained dormant in other medieval contexts. This Venetian exception to the general medieval trend toward increasing restrictions on female property ownership offers a crucial historical lesson. Economic rights create space for agency far beyond their immediate legal scope. Your management of the silk workshop began as simple protection of your dote interest during your husband's absence, but evolved into genuine commercial partnership based on demonstrated capability. As stars emerge above the lagoon city, you think, again of Chiara Dandolo's words about invisible monuments. The greatest achievements of Venetian women may not be recorded in official chronicles or commemorated with statues in public squares. Instead, they exist in account books and contracts, in flourishing family businesses and expanded trade networks, in patterns of female education and commercial mentorship, passed from mother to daughter across generations, and perhaps most significantly, in the gradual normalization of women's commercial participation within a society otherwise thoroughly patriarchal in structure, not through confrontational demands for equality, a concept alien to medieval thinking, but through quiet, persistent demonstration of capability within the spaces that property rights made available. As you and Marco rise to go inside, the lights of Venice twinkling below like earthbound stars, you carry with you the knowledge that your daughters will inherit not just material assets, but possibilities. Pathways to agency carved by generations of Venetian women who transformed their dote from mere financial security into foundations for genuine economic citizenship. This moment fades softly now. Let's continue on, deeper into the past. The mist thickens around your consciousness as you drift northward. across stormy seas to a land of fire and ice. Here, in the harsh beauty of medieval Iceland, another story awaits. One of women who stood as landowners and legal agents against a backdrop of glaciers and geysers, their rights preserved in ancient traditions that valued survival above all other concerns. The wind carries the scent of snow and wood smoke as you stand at the doorway of your longhouse, watching the first light of dawn break over the eastern mountains. Frost sparkles on the grass of the home field, and your breath forms clouds in the chill morning air. The year is 1183, and you are Thora Einarsdottir, 30 summers old, mistress of Hvamur Farm in western Iceland. Your woolen cloak, dyed a deep indigo and fastened with an intricately worked silver brooch, does little to ward off the piercing cold, but you remain a moment longer, surveying your domain. The main longhouse, built partially into the earth for insulation, stretches before you, its turf roof dusted with the night's frost. Smoke rises from the central hearth hole, promising warmth inside. Beyond stand the outbuildings, a smithy, storehouse, dairy shed, and several animal byres where cattle and sheep shelter through the harsh Icelandic winter. Beyond the immediate farmstead, land stretches toward the distant mountains. Meadows for grazing, stands of scrubby birch for firewood, a small waterfall that powers your mill through most of the year. All this belongs to you, not through marriage or as temporary guardian for a male relative, but in your own right as inheritor under Iceland's distinctive laws. You turn at the sound of approaching footsteps, your foreman Björn, already prepared for the day's work despite the early hour. At 50, his beard is streaked with grey, but his shoulders remain broad from decades of farm labour. He has served your family since before your birth, first under your father Einar, then continuing loyally after you inherited the property upon your father's death 6 years ago. The men are ready to begin slaughtering the marked sheep, he reports, his breath fogging in the cold air. Hallgrimur suggests we might wait another day, with the weather turning, but I thought you should decide. You consider this information carefully. The autumn slaughter is critical. Too many animals kept through winter will deplete precious hay stores. Too few means hunger if the spring comes late. You glance at the northern sky, reading the clouds with the practiced eye of someone whose survival depends on weather prediction. Hallgrimur is right to be cautious, but I see no storm pattern yet, you decide. Begin with the weathers we marked last week. If the weather shifts before midday, we can stop and continue tomorrow. Björn nods, accepting your judgment without question. This easy deference is not due to any personal qualities, but to your position as landowning bondi, a term that in most of Norse society would refer only to free male farmers, but in Iceland applies to any free person, male or female, who owns and manages land. You return inside to the welcome warmth of the longhouse. The central hearth fire has been built up, casting flickering light across the main room, where household members are breaking their fast with porridge and skyr. Your two daughters, Gudrun, 14, and Ingibjörg, 11, help the serving. Women distribute bread. Your son Einar, named for your father and just turning 9, feeds kindling to the fire under the watchful eye of his nurse. At the table sits your husband, Thorstein Gunnarsson, sharpening a knife in preparation for the day's slaughter. 10 years your junior, he came to your household through marriage 5 years after you inherited Hvamur. In most medieval societies, such a marriage would have transferred ownership and authority to him, regardless of how the property was acquired. In Iceland, with its unique legal traditions, the farm remains unquestionably yours, a fact acknowledged in the marriage contract negotiated before your wedding. Thorstein looks up as you approach, his handsome face creasing in a smile. Björn says we proceed with slaughter today. Yes, beginning with the wethers, you confirm, accepting a bowl of hot porridge from Gudrun. I'll come to the field once I've spoken with Haldora about the preparations for smoking and salting. He nods, returning to his knife sharpening. Your marriage has proven to be a partnership of mutual respect, rather than the subordination commonly expected elsewhere. Thorstein brought valuable skills as a blacksmith and warrior, but never challenged your authority as landowner and head of household. Such arrangements, while not universal in Iceland, are common enough to raise few eyebrows, a testament to the distinctive property rights that evolved in this isolated island society. After breaking your fast, you confer with Haldora, the elderly woman who has overseen your household's food preservation since your childhood. Her gnarled fingers may move more slowly now, but her knowledge of smoking, salting, and fermentation techniques remains unmatched. Together, you review the supplies needed for processing the slaughtered animals. Salt traded at significant expense from Norwegian merchants, herbs gathered during summer months, wood for smoking chambers. With household matters addressed, you wrap yourself in your cloak once more and make your way to the slaughtering field. The morning has warmed slightly, the frost melting under a sun that rises ever later as winter approaches. In the designated area some distance from the main buildings, men work efficiently at their grim but necessary task. Blood steams in the wad, cold air as it soaks into the ground. Nothing will be wasted from these animals that sustain your household through the harsh northern winters. Thorstein works alongside the other men, his strength evident as he helps hold animals for the killing. He glances up, acknowledging your arrival with a nod, before returning to his task. You watch the proceedings with a critical eye, noting the condition of each animal, mentally calculating how much meat, tallow, and wool each will provide. A rider approaches from the south, following the track that connects your farm to neighboring settlements. You recognize Gisli, son of your nearest neighbor, Haldor of Millar Farm. The young man reins in his sturdy pony near where you stand observing the slaughter. Thora Einarsdottir, he greets you formally, dismounting with the fluid grace of youth. My father sends word that the Thing representative will pass through our district next week to collect the assembly tax and record any matters for the spring Althing. You nod acknowledgement of this information. The Althing, Iceland's assembly of free farmers that serves as both parliament and court, is central to the governance of this land with no king. Each spring, representatives from across Iceland gather at Thingvellir to settle disputes, establish laws, and manage the affairs of the fragile commonwealth that has existed since the island's settlement 3 centuries earlier. Thank your father for the message, you respond. Will you take some refreshment before returning? The young man accepts the hospitality that custom demands, and you send a servant to bring bread and ale. As you wait, Gisli shifts somewhat uncomfortably. There is another matter, he says finally. My father wished me to inquire informally about your intentions regarding the contested grazing land at Krostalur. You maintain a neutral expression despite feeling a flash of irritation. The dispute over grazing rights in the valley called Krostalur has simmered between your farms for generations. Your father and Haldor had maintained an uneasy compromise, but since your inheritance, Haldor has made increasingly assertive claims. My intentions remain unchanged, you state, firmly. The eastern portion of Krostalur belongs to Hvammur Farm, as established in my great-grandfather's original land claim and confirmed by arbitration during my father's lifetime. Gisli's discomfort visibly increases. My father thought perhaps With Thorstein now part of your household, a new arrangement might be considered. Man to man, as it were. Now the irritation surfaces in your voice. Thorstein is my husband, not the owner of Famor. If your father wishes to discuss Krossdalor, he may speak with me directly, as law and custom provide. The young man flushes but nods acceptance. When the servant returns with refreshments, the conversation shifts to safer topics. Weather predictions for the coming winter, news from distant parts of Iceland, carried by travelling merchants, the quality of this year's hay harvest. After Gisli departs, you find Thorstein taking a brief rest from the slaughter work, drinking water from a wooden cup. He raises an eyebrow questioningly, having observed your conversation with the young messenger from a distance. Haldor still believes he can circumvent me by appealing to you about Krossdalor, you explain, unable to keep exasperation from your tone. Thorstein's mouth quirks in a half-smile. Some men learn new ways with difficulty. He hands you his cup to share the water. What will you do when the thing representative comes? Raise the matter formally? You consider this option carefully. Formal legal proceedings at the Althing are complex, expensive, and time-consuming. As a woman, you would need to appoint a male spokesperson to present your case, though the decision-making authority would remain yours. Despite these complications, Icelandic law grants you full standing to pursue your property rights. Perhaps not yet, you decide. I'll consult with my Uncle Gunnar first. He remembers the previous arbitration and might suggest a less confrontational approach. Thorstein nods approval. Wise. Legal battles consume resources better used elsewhere. He gestures toward the slaughtering field. I should return to work. Will you visit your mother today as planned? You confirm this intention. Your mother, Sigríður, lives independently on a smaller property nearby, her own inheritance that remains separate from what you received from your father. This arrangement, unusual in most medieval societies but relatively common in Iceland, provides another example of how Norse women's property rights in this isolated commonwealth differ from continental practices. By midday, you're riding along. The narrow track that connects Havama to your mother's farm at Hull. The landscape unfolds around you in stark beauty. Rolling hills covered in moss and sparse grass. Dramatic mountains in the distance. The occasional cluster of birch trees, barely higher than a tall man. It is a harsh land that permits little. Agriculture beyond hay for winter fodder, forcing reliance on livestock, fishing, and careful preservation of resources. This environmental reality shaped Iceland's distinctive legal traditions regarding women and property. When Norse settlers arrived in the 9th century, survival required maximizing every available human resource, regardless of gender. Land was abundant, but marginal in quality. Labor was scarce and precious. Under such conditions, practical necessity overrode the gender hierarchies more rigidly maintained in the Norwegian homeland. Your pony picks its way carefully across a small stream, water splashing against its fetlocks. You adjust your sitting fur against the saddle, grateful for its warmth against the increasing chill as clouds gather overhead. The weather is turning after all. Perhaps Hallgrimur's caution about the slaughter timing had merit. Hull Farm comes into view as you crest a small rise, a modest longhouse with several outbuildings, smoke rising steadily from the main structure. Your mother has managed this property independently for over 20 years, since the death of your father left her a widow with the option to maintain her own separate household rather than being absorbed into yours. Sigríður meets you at the door. Her once auburn hair now completely silver, but her posture still straight, despite 63 winters. "Daughter," she greets you warmly, embracing you before leading you inside. "I've been watching the clouds. You should not stay long if you wish to return before the weather turns." The interior of her longhouse is smaller than yours, but arranged with similar efficiency. Central hearth, wall benches that serve as seating by day, and sleeping platforms by night, loom and spinning wheel positioned to catch the light from the small oil-filled window openings. Two serving women move quietly about their tasks, preparing the midday meal. "I've brought you the new wool," you tell her, removing a bundle from your saddlebag. The dark grey sheep gave particularly fine fleece this year. Sigridor examines the offering with expert fingers. Though she maintains her own flocks, she has always had a special appreciation for the wool from Vamer's sheep, claiming it takes natural dyes better than any other. Her woven goods, particularly her distinctive blue and green wall hangings, are sought after throughout the district. Over a simple meal of dried fish, buttermilk and barley bread, you relay the message about the Thing representative's upcoming visit and the continued dispute with Haldor over Krostalur. Your mother listens thoughtfully, her lined face revealing nothing until you finish speaking. "Haldor has always been ambitious," she comments finally. "Even as a young man, he sought to extend his boundaries at neighbors' expense. Your father checked him firmly during his lifetime." She takes a sip of buttermilk. "Now he tests whether a woman will defend her rights with equal vigor." You feel a flash of defensiveness. "I've made my position clear." Words alone rarely suffice with men like Haldor. Sigridur's tone is matter-of-fact rather than critical. "When the Thing representative comes, you should formally register your complaint about his cattle grazing beyond the agreed boundary last summer, not to pursue immediate legal action, but to establish that you are both aware and willing to use legal mechanisms." Her advice reflects the practical reality of Iceland's system. Women like you have full property rights under law, but exercising those rights often requires strategic thinking and occasional demonstrations of resolve. While Icelandic women cannot directly participate in Thing deliberations, they can and do initiate legal proceedings, provide testimony, and make decisions about how their cases are pursued. "I'll consider it," you acknowledge. "Uncle Gunnar could speak for me if the matter reaches the Althing." Sigridur nods approval. He would serve well in that role. After a moment's hesitation, she adds, "How fares your household with Thorstein? Does he continue to respect the boundaries established in your marriage contract?" The question might seem intrusive from anyone else, but you understand your mother's concern. When you, as a wealthy widow, chose to remarry a man younger and less established than yourself, many questioned the wisdom of such a match. The carefully negotiated marriage contract, specifying that Vamor would remain your sole property and that Thorstein would have limited authority over household decisions, had been your protection against potential exploitation. He has been honorable in all respects, you assure her. He contributes his labor and expertise, but never challenges my authority as landowner. Sigrida's expression softens. "I am glad. Not all women are so fortunate in their choices." Her gaze turns distant, perhaps remembering her own experiences. "Our laws protect women's property better than most places in the world, but the daily reality of that protection still depends greatly on the character of the men in our lives." This observation captures an essential truth about women's property rights in medieval Iceland. The legal framework, allowing women to inherit, own, and manage land and goods independently, was remarkably progressive compared to contemporary European societies. Yet the practical exercise of these rights still occurred within a culture that valued masculine strength and often settled disputes through violence or its implicit threat. As predicted, the weather begins to deteriorate as you prepare to depart. Your mother presses a bundle of dried herbs into your hands, precious medicines gathered during the brief summer months, and embraces you firmly before you mount your pony for the return journey. Remember, she says as a parting thought, your great-grandmother Thordis once took axe in hand and personally patrolled her boundary markers when neighbours encroached after her husband's death. Sometimes we must remind men that our ownership is not merely theoretical. The ride back to Famur becomes increasingly unpleasant as sleet begins to fall, driven horizontally by strengthening winds. You pull your cloak tighter and trust your pony to find the path it has travelled many times before. Iceland's weather is notoriously changeable, one of many environmental challenges that shaped the pragmatic approach to gender and property embedded in its legal traditions. You reach home as true darkness falls, the sleet now mixed with snow that accumulates quickly on the ground. Stable hands take charge of your pony while you hurry into the welcoming warmth of the longhouse. The main room bustles with activity. Women processing meat from the day's slaughter, children assisting. With simpler tasks, men repairing tools by firelight. The air is thick with the smells of blood, fat, smoke, and humanity. Thorstein approaches as you remove your snow-crusted cloak, his face concerned. You returned just in time. The storm strengthens. He helps you toward the fire, where Gudrun has prepared hot mead flavoured with precious honey. How fared your mother? Well enough, you reply, gratefully accepting the warm drink. She sends herbs for winter medicines and advice about handling Haldor's encroachment. Over the evening meal, fresh mutton for this special day of slaughter, a luxury compared to the usual diet of preserved foods. You share your mother's suggestion about formally registering the boundary dispute when the Thing representative arrives. Thorstein listens thoughtfully, as does Björn the foreman, who has earned the right to participate in household councils through decades of loyal service. It's sound advice, Björn offers. Haldor respects only strength and the law's force. A formal complaint now might prevent greater conflict later. Thorstein nods agreement. I could ride to Malar tomorrow, weather permitting, and inform Haldor directly of your intention. Perhaps knowing you plan formal action will encourage him toward compromise. You consider this suggestion carefully. Having your husband deliver such a message might be interpreted as acknowledgement that male authority stands behind your property claims, precisely the perception you wish to avoid. I think not, you decide. If anyone goes, it should be Björn, as my representative, not you as my husband. The distinction matters. Understanding shows in Thorstein's eyes as he inclines his head in acceptance. This subtle negotiation of roles, maintaining your clear authority as property owner while respecting your husband's dignified place within the household, characterizes your marriage and reflects the complex balance Icelandic women must maintain when exercising their property rights. That night, lying beside Thorstein on the sleeping platform, listening to the storm howl outside and the breathing of household members all around in the communal sleeping area, you reflect on the unique position of Icelandic women regarding property ownership. The legal code known as Gragas explicitly recognizes women's right to inherit and manage land, to control their own dowries, to initiate divorce and reclaim their property if marriages fail, to enter into contracts and pursue legal claims. These rights, far more extensive than those enjoyed by women in contemporary England, France, or even in the Scandinavian homelands, evolved from practical necessity in Iceland's challenging environment. When Norse settlers first arrived on this volcanic island in the 9th century, survival required utilizing every available human resource regardless of gender. The marginality of the land and isolation of settlements meant that women often managed farms alone for extended periods, while men were fishing, trading, or raiding abroad. Under such conditions, rigid gender hierarchies became luxury that even the most traditionally minded could ill afford. Women needed legal standing to protect family interests during men's absences. Inheritance practices needed flexibility to ensure land remained productive, regardless of whether heirs were male or female. What began as pragmatic adaptation to environmental constraints gradually codified into one of the medieval world's most progressive systems regarding women's property rights. Morning brings clear skies, but bitter cold. The sleet and snow have transformed the landscape into a glittering white expanse, beautiful but treacherous. After the household breaks fast with porridge and the previous day's fresh meat, you confer with Björn about sending a message to Halldór. Together you draft a formal notification that you intend to register the Krostalur boundary dispute with the Thing representative, but remain open to the same compromise arrangement that existed during your father's lifetime. Take 2 men with you, you instruct, as Björn prepares to depart for Melar farm. Be respectful but firm. Make it clear that I speak with the full authority of a landowner, not as a woman seeking male protection. The day passes in the rhythm of necessary work that defines life on an Icelandic farmstead. You oversee the women preparing intestines for sausage casings, check storerooms to ensure proper organization of preserved foods that will sustain the household through winter, and review the accounts of trade goods set aside to exchange with merchants when ships return in spring. Gudrun works alongside you, her 14-year-old hands already skilled at tasks essential for survival in this harsh land. You watch her with a mixture of pride and contemplation. Soon, decisions must be made about her future, whether to arrange marriage or allow her to remain longer in your household, developing skills that might eventually enable her to manage property of her own. Unlike daughters in most medieval societies, Gudrun has genuine prospects for economic independence. Under Icelandic law, she can inherit land equally with her brother if you choose such distribution in your will. Even if she marries, her property rights will be protected, with her dowry remaining under her control and any land she brings to the union staying firmly hers. These legal protections create life possibilities for Icelandic women that would be unimaginable elsewhere in the medieval world. While still operating within a patriarchal culture that values masculine strength and restricts women's participation in formal governance, Iceland's property laws provide a foundation for female agency that significantly moderates gender hierarchy in daily life. Björn returns mid-afternoon, his beard and eyebrows frosted with ice from the journey. As he warms himself by the fire, he reports on his encounter with Halldór. The flames dance across his weathered face, melting the tiny crystals into droplets that gleam like amber beads in the firelight. You offer him a horn of warm mead, which he accepts with grateful hands still red from the cold. Halldór was not pleased, Björn says, after taking a long draught. He claims the eastern pasture has always belonged to his family, despite what your grandmother's property deeds state. He passes you a small leather pouch. But I showed him the boundary stones as you instructed, with the marks your grandfather carved 20 summers ago, and I reminded him that challenging a woman's odal rights in Thing would bring shame upon his household. You take the pouch, feeling its weight. Payment for the wool Halldór purchased last season. Even in dispute, the practical matters of trade continue. This is the way of Iceland, where women's property rights have been protected, since the settlement days nearly 3 centuries ago. Unlike the mainland traditions where men might easily seize a widow's lands, here on this windswept island, the law of odal rights protects your inheritance. The fire crackles as you pour the silver coins into your palm. And what did he say to that, you ask, knowing Haldor's reputation for stubbornness? He grumbled like a bear woken from winter sleep, Björn says with a slight smile that crinkles the corners of his eyes. But he knows the law. No man can challenge property that has come to you through inheritance. Not your husband's brothers, not the neighboring farmers. The sagas tell of women who have successfully defended such rights before the Althing. You nod, remembering your grandmother's stories, how she had stood before the law speakers when challenged after your grandfather's death, how she had recited from memory the boundaries of her lands, the provenance of each field and meadow. In Norway or Denmark, her voice would have carried little weight. But here, in the Republic of Iceland, the law recognized her right to hold and manage property independently. There's more, Björn adds, removing his heavy cloak and hanging it near the fire. Haldor mentioned that his sister Gudrun has returned from her husband's homestead in the western fjords. She brings her children and her property. Apparently her husband's kin were not pleased that his lands passed to her upon his drowning. This news catches your interest. Gudrun had married 5 years ago, a match arranged with a wealthy landowner whose farmstead lay 3 days' journey away. That she has returned with her inherited property speaks to the unusual strength of Icelandic women's rights. In most Norse lands, a widow would find herself at the mercy of her husband's family. But Icelandic law allowed women not only to inherit, but to manage their property independently. Perhaps we should invite her to share our meal tonight, you suggest. The journey must have been difficult with small children, and winter approaches quickly this year. Björn nods his agreement. A wise suggestion. Her knowledge of Western trading routes might also prove valuable for next season's exchanges. As he speaks, your daughter Freydis enters, carrying freshly spun wool. At 12 years old, she already shows the independent spirit that Icelandic women are known for. You observe her hands, capable and strong like your own, like your grandmother's before you. One day, she too will inherit property in her own right, not merely as a temporary caretaker for male relatives, but as a full legal owner. Is Haldor still being difficult about the boundary stones? She asks, showing that she has been paying careful attention to household matters. This too is part of her education, learning not just domestic skills but property management, legal rights, and negotiation. Haldor will always find something to grumble about, you tell her with a small smile. But he respects the law, and the law respects our claim. As evening approaches, you direct the preparation of a heartier meal than originally planned. The kitchen area fills with the aroma of stewing lamb seasoned with the few precious herbs that grow in your sheltered garden. Freydis arranges extra sleeping furs near the fire for Gudrun's children, while you retrieve a small store of preserved berries, a luxury saved for special occasions or honored guests. When Gudrun arrives as the day's light fades, her face shows the weariness of travel, but also quiet determination. Her 2 small children cling to her cloak, eyes wide at the strange surroundings. You welcome them with the traditional offering of bread and salt, then usher them toward the fire's warmth. The western farm was prosperous, Gudrun tells you later, as the children sleep and the adults share mead around the glowing embers. Asgrim was a good husband and left everything in order. His brothers argued that the land should pass to them rather than to me, as they had helped work it before Asgrim and I married. But the marriage contract specified your rights, you suggest, knowing how carefully such documents were prepared in Iceland. She nods, her face solemn in the firelight. It did, and I had it with me, preserved in oilskin and witnessed by the Godi. When I presented it at the district thing, even Askrim's brothers could not dispute its legitimacy. She takes a sip of mead before continuing. Still, I chose to return home rather than remain where I would face daily resentment. The property is legally mine. I have leased the farmstead to a reliable tenant and will collect payment twice yearly. Björn, who has been listening quietly, leans forward. You've done well to protect your children's inheritance. Few places outside Iceland would recognize a woman's right to such arrangements. My grandmother told me of her cousin who married into a Danish family, Gudrun replies. When widowed, she was given only a small allowance while her husband's brother took control of everything, even her own dowry goods. Here at least, the law sees women as capable of holding property in our own names. You think about how this tradition has shaped Icelandic society differently from other Norse lands. Women here speak in councils, manage significant properties, engage in trade, and even occasionally appear as plaintiffs or defendants at the Althing. The sagas tell of formidable women like Aud the Deep-Minded, who claimed land during the settlement period and distributed it among her followers, establishing herself as a respected chieftain in her own right. As the night deepens, your thoughts drift to tomorrow's tasks. There will be fall slaughtering to finish before the worst weather sets in, wool to prepare for winter weaving, and now a discussion with Gudrun about possibly combining some trading efforts next spring. Your property gives you not just security, but options, connections, and standing in the community. The last embers glow orange in the hearth as the household settles into sleep. Outside, the first snowflakes of winter begin to fall, dusting the fields and pastures that have been passed through your maternal line for generations. In this harsh land at the edge of the habitable world, women have carved out rights unseen in much of Europe, not through revolution, but through the practical recognition that survival requires acknowledging the capabilities of all who can contribute. As sleep approaches, you feel the weight of the keys at your belt, symbols of your authority over storerooms and chests, over the material goods that translate to power and security. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, perhaps even more boundary, disputes or negotiations. But the property that grants you standing cannot easily be taken away, not by husbands' relatives, not by neighbouring farmers, not even by chieftains. It is yours by law and custom, a tradition that has shaped Iceland's women into some of the most independent in the medieval world. The wind whispers against the turf walls of your home, carrying the promise of winter's long darkness. But within, there is warmth, security, and the quiet strength of a woman who knows what she owns and what she is owed, by law, by custom, and by the recognition of her own worth. Thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.